Very first day I started my work at that company, my first day on board, I actually picked out this guy out of all my colleagues, and I think he looks like a civil servant or a former civil servant, and apparently he used to work with the Ministry of Environment.
What about this one?
That's it. I'm thinking, Jay, maybe if you put on the suit or
suit and tie,
and you maybe sometimes in my opinion, sometimes I think civil servants, when you are meeting with people in a very formal meeting, you don't smile that much, right? Because usually what you talk about is really serious business.
Is there a rule like that? We can't smile that much?
No, I don't think so. We can smile at our will.
Really? Okay, I got the wrong impression
exactly.
then.
But actually nowadays, though I've left the ministry for many, many years, but I can still identify the government officials from a group of people, because I think there's a kind of a dress code for the officials. Mostly for the local government officials. Maybe they don't, sometimes mostly they wear suits, but they don't put on ties. And they like to wear white jacket, but
no ties.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes the ties, if you take a close observation, you can find that the color or the design of the ties are quite similar between the superior and the subordinates.
Right.
Maybe, yeah.
It won't be too shiny, because they need to be calm, and because they're officials, and it really has a lot to do with the work, because they're in the government organizations. Their decisions, their policies will influence lots of people. So every move has to be very cautious.
Okay.
Right.
And so that is a big influence to you. Are not. You have no experience in that.
I have to admit, I mean, I know my image, I look nothing like a civil servant. I would never be qualified for
but
that.
it's nothing wrong with all these officials, because, I mean, they have so much responsibility on their shoulder.
I mean,
and
their work is really serious, and that affects a lot of people, and even the whole country. So there is a reason behind that.
So with that burden on their back, they have to be cautious, and that is also a reflection maybe in their daily life, the way they behave, the way they talk, the way they communicate with others.
That's right. Now we call it harmonious.
Yeah.
Okay, harmonious. And for this harmonious program, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, more stories about civil servants.
你是否願意承擔會一世照顧佢呢？我願意。
咁係咪我病咗要入醫院，你都會照顧我先？
我同你一齊參加政府嘅醫保計劃，就唔使擔心啦。
咁我哋呢啲有病嘅又點算啊？
醫保計劃係人人受保，終身續保，有病冇病都可以參加㗎。
公營系統仲會永遠做香港市民嘅醫療安全網添。The government has proposed a health protection scheme. Please give us your views.
My health, my choice.
And welcome back to Crossover. Let's move on to another story about civil servants, and this one, it's happening in the United States. According to a recent report on USA Today, the number of civil servants in America has been increased in the past 5 years. No, in the past 2 years since Obama took office, has been increased by twice. But lately, there is a new story. Obama said their salary level will be kept unchanged for 2 years.
That means heavier government spending.
Yeah, the number of the civil servants has been doubled in the past 2 years, but he also said their salaries won't be changed for the coming 2 years.
Do you have a figure of how much is their salary?
We have an average figure. It's about $67,000 US dollars. What is our number?
I don't know.
About 60,000 renminbi. So it's about the same number, but in the currency, it would be in RMB, not in the US dollars.
It's higher than the average number of people working in the industrial sectors, right? And I think that nowadays, if we talk about civil servants, we think they have a very stable work environment, and in the meantime, they do have a comparatively higher salary level, income level, that is compared to those people who work in the industrial sector that have the same length of years of working experience with those people. So that is why actually many graduates nowadays are choosing to become a civil servant rather than going to business or going to companies, the private sectors.
Yeah, I would like to remind you one thing that for government officials, maybe in my years or your years, the officials are located at the apartment.
Yeah, they're given an apartment, virtually given. I mean, they pay fees, rental fees, but a minimum number.
Really?
Right.
Well, in the past years,
nowadays,
in his ages, in his time.
Your ages, okay.
Right. But nowadays, the apartment can be about 2 or 3 million yuan value.
Right.
Yeah. That is a great sum of money.
Well, so it's when we say the salaries, it's basically we should talk about a package. You know, it's either in the currency. Every month you receive the salary of about 5,000-6,000 these days, but. In my days, well, I started actually with the monthly salary of 500.
Oh no, I started with 64 yuan.
64?
Yes.
Wow,
so
which year was that?
Postgraduate.
Yeah, well, and that means he's older than me.
Right, we can tell that.
Yeah, maybe not long ago, but when I graduated, I went to the Ministry of Education right after graduation from university, and my first month salary was 500.
Okay.
But at the time it was, I wouldn't say it's low, because my parents at the time, they were only like roughly the same. But they've worked for
many years.
20, 30, 40
decades
years.
Already.
Yeah. But again, as you said, the package includes not only the salary.
There's very good benefits, right, for civil servants. That's the difference.
Say medical treatment.
Free medical
treatment.
And there's a housing fund.
After retirement, you have the pension almost the same as your salary.
Okay, it really depends on how many years you've worked.
Maybe 30 years or
30 years,
over 30
25
years.
years.
Retire.
Oh, that's great.
And for senior officials, you have a government car.
But when you retire, you don't have that.
No. After retirement.
But still, after retirement, if you have the retirement pension, as you mentioned, that's a very good guarantee for people when you get old and you lose the ability to work, and you still have a very stable income.
According to some reports, even the retired ones will get the salary increase if there is an increase for all civil servants.
Really?
Yeah, there's supposed to be some increase. Yeah, together with the development of the economy. Yes.
And also the biggest plus, the biggest advantage of being a civil servant in China in those years, I'm not quite sure about what's happening these days, but in those years, well, almost everyone will get at least a place to live in. That means either they will just give it to you. Maybe it doesn't belong to you, but you can live there. You can stay there for as long as you want. Or you pay, rental fees, but those, it's very kind of a minimum, low rental fees. But since the starting of this century, it's been changed gradually, and the commercial way has been introduced, and you have to buy your own apartments, but they do give you some subsidies, sometimes allowances or apartment allowances.
Yeah. But you can still, even you can buy at a very low price and a very favorable price.
Still?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Still low price.
Right.
You pay only the cost of the construction, actually.
That's a very good deal.
So now, do you want to be a civil servant, Li?
I don't think they would want to recruit someone like me. I mean, to be honest, when I graduated from college, from the undergraduate course, we actually had this chance to go for an interview with one of the ministries. I don't remember which one. but they actually gave the chance to the top students. You know, they would first go to the #1 student where all your grades ranks #1. And my grades ranked #2 in our faculty of that year. So the #1 student decided to go on to study postgraduate. So she said, I passed that chance.
So you are not qualified to be a civil servant at the time.
So
we
no.
were the qualified ones.
No, actually, I was about to be. Actually, when the #1 student said she wanted to pass the chance, and they came to me, so says you're #2, and if you want to go, you can go. You know, then the #3 student would just have to miss that chance. And I thought about it because I think it's a very good ministry and it means a very stable working environment. And also, in China, in my years, I don't know what's happening right now, but anyway, in my years, students still care a lot about the hukou problem, the registered residence. Because if you want to stay in Beijing, many would love to have their registered residence to be moved to Beijing. And that's what many civil servants, if you work with a government organization, they would actually solve this whole problem for you. But if you go to the private sector, they might give you a higher pay, but they don't take care of your hukou problem. So I thought about it, and then I think with my personality, you know, I'm not the kind of person who would always like to do things within the frame or always follow the rules step by step. I sometimes want to go here and there and ling around. You know, my mind sometimes would go out of my head for a moment. So I thought about it, maybe my personality decides that I am not suitable to become a civil servant.
I mean,
that's why I said no.
If we come back to what we talked about in the first part of this show, it's, you know, to be an official in the government, it's a tough job because you need to be very cautious. What you do will affect lots of people. But talking about this package about housing, we have to be aware, if you want to enjoy that policy, that advantage, maybe you'll have to stay with the ministry for certain years. You'll sign a contract with the ministry.
But if you leave before
you have to
that,
pay extra according to the commercial level. Well, it's market price.
Okay.
So it's just fair, you know. You have that package, but you have to serve the government, serve the organization for certain years.
Fair.
So I mean that if you divide that kind of expenses into our salary, then 5,000 or 6,000 is not what you got. Exactly, you got much more than that.
So civil servants are really having a good income from what we've just discussed. That's why I think
if you take the exam, you can go to the government at any time.
I think that's why many governments around the world are actually trying to slash the payment for civil servants, because that's quite a big chunk of government spending.
It is.
Like in France, there's this story. The French president was about to actually, I think it was either slash income or it was sort of to streamline the government organs or something. But, you know, he was, of course, he was faced with different voices from the civil servants. And then a woman writer who wrote a book about the lives as a civil servant in France. We cannot judge if what she's written in that book is true or not, but from what she wrote, the efficiency in those government organizations are quite low. You know, people compete. How long can you spend in front of the coffee machine? How often can you come up with a sick note to get away from the office for weeks?
They should leave, you know. They're not qualified to be a good civil servant.
The book was a godsend for their president. You know, he was, I think he must be the only one in France that really wanted to believe what's happening in this book, so I can go on with my campaign.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's about the package that a civil servant will get in China, and that is also one of the reasons why to be a civil servant has become a very much sought after job in China, and lots of fresh graduates would just fight to get a position in the government organizations. And when we come back after a short break, we'll talk about that. And welcome back to Crossover. Well, we're talking about, say, the image of a civil servant in China, and the appearance, and also, say, the package they'll have, the treatment they'll have to be a civil servant in China. And as I said, it has become a very much sought after job in China. According to a report, a recent report, over 1.4 million people applied for being the civil servants in China, and that's the third time that we have over 1 million people applying for those jobs. That do not include all these civil servants positions in local governments. It's only about central government organizations. Over 1.4 million.
More than the PLA army soldiers.
Even more than the soldier. And for 2010, the recruitment ratio will be as high as 59 to 1.
So that's 59 people competing for one job.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you still want to take the examination?
Maybe not, maybe not.
Hey, once again, and you mentioned for several times the examinations. What is it like?
At my time, there's not
there is no exam.
No exam. There's some exam. There's oral, English oral examination, and some of the officials from the ministry came to school, and we talked, we chat, and some questions. Right?
What kind of questions?
Like questions like.
Why do you want to be with us?
But it's quite different from nowadays. It's a piece of article, and you read it aloud, and they ask you some question about the content.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
It's about the comprehension of an article.
Yes, and you chatted a bit about your life, your experience traveling in English. Yes.
So there was no written tests?
No, not actually written, because they only selected some classes of students. Yeah,
so at the time,
already selected ones.
Yeah, in those years, the ministries would still go to these universities to find the right ones, the new blood. But these days, they don't have to go to all these universities.
Wait and have all the people come in.
Just maybe issue a notice on the website, say we need 2 people this year, and then you get maybe hundreds of people applying for those positions.
120, well, that's 60 to 1. So
yeah, on average.
With that ratio.
Yeah, well, in my years, I actually graduated.
So we are from different ages.
Well, I actually graduated in 1994, and that was actually 1 year before the system of civil servant was officially adopted, introduced in the Chinese government. Before, we were only called, say, officers or officials, government officials, but we don't see ourselves as the civil servants, and we don't have the national policy regarding that sense. And starting from 1995, if I remember it correctly, and one kind of exam was introduced, and that was like a qualification exam. Everyone, if you want to be a civil servant, you have to take that exam. You have to pass that exam before you can even have a chance to be interviewed by all these ministries.
What kind of exam is it?
Good question, because I haven't taken any exams like this. But these pictures are showing all these young graduates taking exams.
Written tests. I've heard it from a friend who actually went to one of those, the civil servant tests last year or the year before. And he said it's really about everything. It's about a little bit of politics and what's happening in China, even around the world. And also things like they would ask you to comprehend or even to analyze a piece of news and offer your own opinion, just to say how well you can think logically in that way.
So it's more about general knowledge.
It's very hard to prepare for such an exam.
Yeah, maybe they just want to see what is the way of your thinking and how much you know about the politics, the news,
current affairs.
Current affairs, right?
Yeah. So it's quite hard to me. It's already 59 people competing for one job, and then there's this very hard written exam, and then there are interviews. I don't know how many rounds. So I'm thinking, that would take like months to prepare and until you pass everything.
Yeah,
the whole
I guess
process?
so. They have textbooks or supporting teaching materials for you to prepare for an exam.
Yes, I've heard that there are courses for training how to take the exams, and they teach you how to dress yourself And many students go to shops and buy suits and maybe spending 2,000, 3,000 yuan
Really? Wow.
for a suit. That is, I think, it's a big burden for the family.
It's like a huge investment.
Yes, it's an investment.
Without realizing, you know, the final income, without a guarantee.
Yes, I think everyone who wants to take the trouble to go through all the whole procedure in order to become a civil servant, he or she must believe that this is truly what we call an iron rice bowl, a 铁饭碗, an iron rice bowl, which means it can never be broken.
It's a guaranteed job.
Because it's iron, and a rice bowl means you would always be able to eat, or you would always be able to support yourself financially if you hold on to this iron rice bowl. So in China, you know, we have this saying, the 铁饭碗
Yeah, maybe there can be many other reasons. For example, the financial crisis, and another one, as you said, the hukou problem.
The permanent residence.
And also maybe the students right after the graduation from a college, maybe they're not ready for themselves to join the society, to face so sophisticated society, different kinds of people, all sorts of matters. Maybe if they go to the government, some unit, they are well protected.